Hi, my name is Josh Gosfield. We're here in Turin, and this is my good friend, Gigi Gaston, who I've spent a lot of time with. The genesis of Gigi Gaston started in this beautiful national park in America. It's called Joshua Tree. And they have these unbelievable stone structures. It looks like something from the Paleolithic era. There should be dinosaurs that are coming out. And I'm just walking around there and thinking, well, what sort of art could I make here? And then I look at the rocks and I go, you know what this looks like? It looks like an album cover for a psychedelic group from the 60s. They're all standing up on the rocks in various poses with their granny glasses and their bell bottoms. And then my first thought is, I know what art I want to make. I want to make album covers for all different groups. I want to do a folk group. I want to do a polka group. I want to do a mariachi band. I want to do a rock and roll band. I want to do a punk band. And I started casting it. And then I thought, no, actually, I don't want to make a lot of album covers. I think I want to tell one story. And I had cast this woman to play a kind of Francois Hardy sort of character. And the trick of taking someone, creating a fictional celebrity, which is what Gigi is, although many people who come in to see the gallery believe she's real. I've heard people say, I remember her, my mother used to listen to her. Everything's created in such a way for it to be completely real. The trick is I couldn't create somebody who, say, was as famous as Sophia Loren or Bob Dylan. And the interesting thing about the period in Europe with yay music, it's completely unknown in America, and strangely, among young people in Europe, it's not even so well known. So even though these yay singers were hugely popular, selling millions of records and on thousands of magazines, many people are just not that familiar with it. So I think that's a perfect era to pick somebody who was famous at the time. I can create an entire story about her, and nobody's going to know 100% that she didn't exist. Where, for instance, if I say, well, here's this Italian actress and she's as famous as Sophia Loren, everybody goes, they understand. Now, I haven't heard of her, so it doesn't make sense. So when I go from that point, I probably begin to write the period where she's creating all of her 45s in the beginning and she becomes a teen idol. And I thought maybe I'll make some album covers, I'll do some magazine covers. But as I'm working on it, I am beginning to write back into her past. And because the model was a Bulgarian and I'm fascinated with gypsy culture, I decided, well, she's going to be a Bulgarian gypsy. And I start writing the whole story of that. And then I start writing her story into the future. And the goal is, as with a celebrity, certain people will be famous, but other people will vault into another form of celebrity. If you take an Elizabeth Taylor, a Sophia Loren, Angelina Jolie, Madonna, these are people who, by the misfortunes that happened in their life and the misbehaviors that they're responsible for, their love triangles, deaths, births, all these sort of things, they're no longer just famous for the particular art they make. So as I go forward into Gigi's future, I'm writing these sorts of stories. And it becomes a very interesting investigation on my part to look at all these people who've become really famous and how have they become famous. Elizabeth Taylor, when she starts out, is just famous for being an actress. And you know, for most pop stars, for most actors, that's what they remain. So it becomes a really fun sort of game where I'm making decisions, and my wife is a writer and she helps me. So for instance, there was a great part where I wanted to maybe have a jealous husband that killed her, and my wife says, no, you can't do that. She has to kill the husband. And I go, you're brilliant. I love it. That's great. And then it's the fun of you know, originally I cast Gigi, but then I'm casting Gigi's lovers, all the various people that are appearing in the images. I'm getting hair and makeup people, I'm getting wardrobe people, I'm going back in time, I'm collecting photographs. I mean, when you're creating these images, there is the poses people stand in, there is the clothes they wear, there's literally the optics of the cameras. Cameras have changed so much. Now we have coated lenses. It's a little boring, it's a little technical. And with the coated lenses, when you take a photograph now, there is so much black in the photographs. But back then there wasn't a lot of black. So I always take all the black way, way, way down. The blacks sort of become dark grays. So all of this is just really fun, and I've got thousands and thousands of photos. On top of it, I'm going onto eBay and I'm collecting French scandal magazines, Italian scandal magazines, fanzines from the time period. So I can understand the graphics, I can understand the language. I don't really speak Italian well, I don't speak French well, so I have to get translators for all these sorts of things. And it becomes sort of a huge adventure. And interestingly for me, my parents were very tapped into culture. My dad grew up in Chicago, and he was smoked a lot of marijuana, listened to a lot of jazz. My mother grew up in New York, but they took us and we moved out to the suburbs of Philadelphia. So my experience as a kid was that we would get all these great magazines and journals, and I would be reading about all these amazing people in New York. But my experience of them was not going out to see them on the streets. I was living in the suburbs, trees and birds, and playing Little League and doing all the suburban things that kids did. But it was so fascinating to me to be reading about these people, and my experience was through the magazines. So in a way, this creation of a fictional celebrity is the way, in many ways, that I understood celebrity as a kid. And on top of that, so much of the fun is I am now the paparazzi photographer in 1967, staging the whole shot. I am the art director of the LP, like for instance, an LP shot in the early 60s, there wasn't a lot of production values. They didn't have thousands of dollars to go out and shoot. It's like you just took a photograph of somebody, and then you brought that photograph back to the guy working in the back of the record store, who was probably the cousin of the owner of the record store, and they just cut out the picture and they threw it on something and put a red border around it. So in each case, with each particular image, there's a vernacular to the design, to the typography, and it was really fun to just be in the service of that. It wasn't like, oh, I want to take the most amazing photograph I could possibly take. I want to really make it look like what it's supposed to be.